NBC's Shaquille Brewster reports from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Also here with us, Washington Post national reporter and co-author of A Very Stable Genius and I Alone Can Fix It, Carol Leonnig, and former FBI supervisor Rob D'Amico. It's good to have all of you here. Shaq, what can you tell us about the investigation and where it stands at this hour?
Well, Chris, we heard from the FBI director yesterday who said that although the suspect is deceased, the investigation is very much ongoing. And here it seems as if we're reaching a next phase of that investigation. That's because we're getting our first real look at what was the suspect's home. We know that he lived with his parents, and that perimeter that used to be around his home with multiple law enforcement agencies there is now fading away. You see the house right there. We did see members of law enforcement going around the area, seemingly canvassing the area after spending hours in it, going through, collecting evidence, piecing together that investigation. And what we have heard from the FBI is that they're not just looking at motive, but they're also trying to see if they can identify and put a timeline together of the suspect's actions and movements before that shooting. You know, they have his cell phone, and they're going through that, trying to gather whatever evidence they can. They also say that they've received more than 2,000 tips at this point from members of the public. We also know they're having interviews and conversations, and say the family is cooperating in that. And as that all is taking place, we're learning more from people who knew him, or at least were familiar with this suspect. We know that he worked as a nursing aide or a dietary aide at a nursing facility about a 15-minute walk from where I stand right now, that he was a member of a gun club that's about a 30-minute drive from where we are. That gun club confirming that he was a member and releasing this statement, both sharing their condolences, but the attorney also saying that obviously the club fully admonishes the senseless act of violence that occurred on Saturday, and again extending their condolences there. So a lot of pieces that are being formed together, as many questions are still unanswered as what happened on Saturday and what investigation needs to occur now.
And Rob, I don't need to tell you that people want answers, and the FBI is in charge of finding those answers. And you always, in these early days, get often a fractured picture of who the shooter is. He's somebody who won a prize for math and science in high school, but also, by the accounts of some people who were in school with him, was bullied. We heard that he went through a background check for his job as an aide at a nursing home, but nothing came up, that he was a good worker. What is the FBI's real job here in terms of finding out who he was, and for a lot of people, the key question, why he did this?
I think the most important thing right now, the priority is to make sure that there were no other co-conspirators. Everyone may think he was a loner, but they really, with the RNC coming up, they really need to start going down that threat stream saying, do we have someone else that he'd been talking to about this? Was it something that was, I don't want to say planned, but was there anyone else involved that may show up at the RNC? So that's the priority. The rest of the investigation is going to go just as they do. And I think this is getting to be more like a mass shooting or a school shooting investigation. When you look at it, he was young, he was bullied. There's a number of people that have come forward and said that. Every time someone comes up and says something, the FBI is going to have to verify it, though. If someone just comes up and says, hey, this is what I saw, then you're going to have to go back in the investigation to prove that, to see if it makes sense. So the priority right now is getting on that phone. They've already done emergency search warrants on all his social media to make sure, again, that communication. And they have a lot of agents on that. Again, with the RNC right there, that's a priority. The rest of it, I don't want to say it can take its time, but it's going to go out in a normal investigation, and they're going to have to verify everything.
Carol, that is the key here, answering the question, how in the world could this possibly happen? You are incredibly well-sourced inside the Secret Service, as anybody who has read your writing knows. I covered a story simultaneously with you about the White House fence being breached, but also that particular breach ended up with the suspect inside the White House, a story that you did extraordinary reporting on. So what are you hearing now from inside the agency?
Well, Chris, thank you for that lovely introduction. Competing with you, I'm sure, was difficult for me many a time. I am hearing from inside the agency just the shock that this had happened at all. Line of sight, which is where you have the ability to have a clear shot at the president or the former president or a senior official, is one of the things that keeps agents up at night. And they have all said to me, uniformly, whether they are current or former, that this is distressing, deeply distressing to them, that somehow a shooter was able to get on a high roof and have a clear shot at Donald Trump and was not obstructed. This line of sight was not mitigated by a bus or a banner or a truck being parked in front of it. And that it appears, at least right now, that the building where this man lifted himself onto and used as a shooting platform was not properly secured, obviously, because he was able to get there and shoot before anybody could detect him or at least stop him. The other thing that I'm hearing is that the Secret Service is, while pretty defensive about their security protocols and feeling that they did a lot of things right, and they did do some things right, including evacuating Donald Trump. While all that is true, the Secret Service is reeling from what it is reeling from every campaign season, being stretched too thin, covering too many bases, and that a lot of its tactical, specialized teams are really quite depleted during this time period, and they are run from pillar to post, covering the president and then various campaign rallies, the vice president, the first lady. All of these people need intense security. And in this instance, there were gaps in their security plan, and the Secret Service is trying to figure out exactly what those gaps were. And Secretary Mayorkas is demanding now, with a separate investigation that the president called for, he is going to be drilling down into how did this happen, what were the gaps, why was such an obvious risk, one we've known about for more than half a century, not addressed.
Yeah, and in fact, the secretary is going to be at the White House in the briefing room a little later on, so maybe we'll get some more details from him. But Carol, I want to play for you. We did obviously a lot of reporting there on scene. Just one interview with someone who was outside that perimeter near the building where the shooter fired from. Take a listen.
No, there was no security on this side at all.
Are you shocked you're this close to the president that there was no security?
I kept asking her.
Thinking about it now, yes.
So we know that the Secret Service works with state officials, local authorities to fill in some of those gaps that you talk about. But ultimately, however many other law enforcement members are on the scene, whatever they're tasked with, does the buck, Carol, always stop with the Secret Service for their protectees?
Absolutely, it stops with the Secret Service. They craft, for every event, they craft a game day plan for the entire site and also the outer perimeter. They do that in coordination with the local police. And, you know, it's one thing for local police maybe to not have been well trained for a very specific tactical mission, like being counter snipers. There were local police who were doing some of the counter sniper work here. Ultimately, a Secret Service agent who is an expert marksman is the person who took out the shooter and the suspected gunman. But it is very normal for local police to be the entity that is protecting the outer perimeter, looking for trouble, looking for suspicious behavior, trying to spot anything that looks like a potential breach in the making, or even something as dramatic as an attack. And there is a way that they are instructed to communicate with the Secret Service about what they spot. But in this case, it doesn't appear that those communications happened quickly enough, and we don't know all the answers, but the Secret Service is the entity that helps structure that perimeter plan.
Carol Leonnig, Rob D'Amico, thank you both very much.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.